Hi folks, here's another little video about the Interceptor 650. Now, like all the videos I've done recently, I'm not some YouTube star or Mr. Personality, and I don't have any editing software or anything like that, but it's just putting a few pointers on as to improvements that I've carried out on my bike and which I hope will help other people. So this one is replacing components on the bike with stainless steel. I personally strongly dislike nuts and bolts rusting on my motorbikes, and the first thing that I usually do is replace as many of the fasteners as possible with stainless, and I like to use stainless Allen bolts as well, which are much easier to remove when necessary. So I thought I'd give a quick rundown of what I've done and put in the links below where to get the various bits. Now, the first thing is that these are stainless steel handlebars from Hitchcock's motorcycles. The actual handlebars are stainless steel. The crossbar is the original one. Now, I found that on the original bars the chrome is not particularly thick and they were getting discoloured and actually starting to rust, little pin pricks of rust. So I bought these from Hitchcock's. They are about, I think at the time, they're about 70 quid. They're not cheap, but they are absolutely correct. One slight downside of those handlebars is that the milling that goes underneath the clamps was nowhere near as pronounced as on the original bars. You know, the grippy bit when you put these, when you put those caps on. The milling was not particularly deep. However, they seem to have done the job. So the bars, obviously, you've got to take off. You can fit this easily enough, and I think that's a big improvement. They're still shiny. They're not as shiny as chrome, but I think they're nice, as you can see. That's the first thing. Now, the other thing is fasteners. Now, I bought kits off eBay. These were pre-made kits for the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. So as you can see, these are stainless Allen bolts. And they came as a kit, which was actually cheaper to buy them that way than it was to buy individual bolts for the rest of the bike. So on both sides, I've replaced the casing covers with stainless. Now, I've also gone round every single fastener on the bike, including the long engine bolts, which are flanged, not Allen, they're just flanged hexagon nuts. I've replaced those. Now, they are domed Allen bolts. I've done mudguard, fork brace, clamps, and what I also bought and located, which is quite tricky, but I found it. I didn't like the fact that, you know, the brake calipers, the rear brake caliper on the bikes, there's a pin that the caliper or the brake pads go along. Let's move that. So if you look here, that there is a stainless brake pad pin, because normally that rusts on any bike and it looks manky, I think. I modified the chain tensioner, these nuts. So I've gone around the entire bike. It's possible to buy everything. As you can see there, stainless. That's a stainless nut either side. Now what I also did was replace the manifold studs in here with stainless exhaust studs that actually have an Allen bolt socket on them. And I've done both sides. Obviously you've got 4 of them. You can just see there, I hope, there's an Allen socket to put that exhaust stud in. So it's a case of working your way around the bike and finding fasteners of any sort. So all of these are done. Now, in order to do this, you need 2 pieces of equipment. And the first one is a vernier gauge, cheap, off eBay, a little battery powered thing. You know, you open it up, this one's got a dicky battery, but you open it up and it will tell you what the diameter of your bolts is. You know, it's just a question of taking a bolt, if I can get this thing to power up. Yeah, this one's had it, I think. However, you just go in and you measure that. So you know whether it's, I mean that one there is obviously that's an 8mm bolt. You get to know them after a while. And then what you need to do is measure the distance from the shoulder of the bolt to the end of the bolt. So you've then got the diameter of the bolt itself and how long it is from the actual cap. Now the other essential piece, little tool, is this. It's a thread gauge, cheap as you like on eBay. And if you look at that, you can see that says 1.25, look. So if we can get that into focus. Obviously not. There's a 125 engraved on it. So you get loads of different thread side pictures, you know? And it's all in one handy little thing. If you type in thread gauge, you'll get it. And then what you do is you simply get your bolt and you get your thread and you make sure that it fits onto the thread of the bolt. It has to be absolutely perfect. You then read what it says there, so that's 125. So in the case of that bolt here, you've got you have an 8mm bolt, and I'll use this without the digital bit. You've got an 8mm bolt and it is 40mm long, look. Yeah? And the same with that. So if you look at this, as you can see, it's 8mm. So those 2 bits, tools, very simple, enable you to remove as many bolts off the bike as you want. And you can do it, you know, a bit at a time. You don't need to be doing them all in one massive go, which I didn't do because it's just so enormous. So, you know, things like handlebars, look, you know, that one there, and clamps there, look, same with there. Now, to me, that's far nicer than looking at rusty, even those are done, look, underneath. They're countersunk Allen bolts. Now, with them being Allen bolts, it basically means that you can take anything off your bike without needing a socket set particularly. All you do is just get your pack of Allen keys, and you can remove anything. Now, I noticed on the first rainy day, you'll find out, sure enough, what components are ferrous and what aren't. The galvanising is not particularly thick on the original bolts and fasteners. Again, you know, it's an inexpensive bike, and I suppose it could be a cost-saving thing. I think it probably is, and that's no disrespect to the bike. I've done these there, you know, frame ones. Now, on a low performance bike like this, you know, he's not being exposed to superhuman stressors. So I've done the engine bolts as well. Now I've also done engine bolts on superbikes. A2 or A4 stainless steel. So that there is a flange nut. It's got a built-in washer, as it were. And around this side, on the other side of that long bolt, you've got your stainless nut, look, with a flange on it. So that's a flange nut. So the first point of call, I would say, is buy the kit. Get one on eBay and get all your bolts. They're different lengths. Some are longer than others. So what you do is you take them out one at a time. Obviously you don't take them all off at once. And you just get your kit and work your way around it and replace like with like. I always put anti-seize. I put anti-seize on the nuts and bolts, look. Aluminium, anti-seize. It's a silvery. And I put some of that on the threads because you never know, you might want to undo them. You do, on standard nuts and bolts, you do get that electrochemical bond that develops between steel and aluminium. It can be a swine to get them out, as in the days of the old crosshead screws on Suzukis and Yamahas and things. You know, you need an impact driver. So if you put anti-seize on, you avoid that. Now, I would say this, I've always replaced the cylinder heads, the manifold studs, always. It can be nerve-wracking. My last one was an XJR 1300 and I replaced all 8 studs with titanium in that particular case because I replaced all the fasteners with titanium on that bike. You've got to be careful. Getting the old studs out, what you don't want to do is shear one off. On this particular bike, 3 of these came out piece of cake, absolutely. The 4th one, a little bit trickier. I put 2 nuts on it, used a spanner. I use a syringe with brake fluid. So brake fluid, I find, is an absolutely fantastic unseizing agent. Beats WD or anything else. And I let it soak for a couple of days. I put a duster underneath it and just dripped brake fluid. And then I got 2 nuts, one to tighten up against the other, a couple of spanners. And once you get the stud to shift, I mean, they probably come straight out, but once you get that stud to shift, you then don't undo it fully, just rock it to and fro, to and fro. I'd use a bit of WD at that point, and slowly rock it and increase the amount of anti-clockwise torque you put on it. In other words, don't go hell for leather. I've even had studs that shear after they've moved on other bikes. So you've really got to be careful. In my opinion, it's worth doing because your manifold studs will rust. They're subject to heat. They've got all the filth off the road going in, rain, you name it. And on this bike, when I did it, the bike was just over a year old. And it had done about 4,000 miles, and one of the studs was really rusty, such that the thread was starting to come off it. Ultimately you can get a pair of mole grips on them, but what you don't want to be doing is trashing that stud. And what you 100% don't want is for it to shear. So proceed with caution. If you can establish that the stud moves, however little, then you give it plenty of lubrication and just half a degree at a time. Just be patient and out it comes. Then I put them back in, put the new ones in with anti-seize on them, even on the cylinder head. And I think it's advisable. I wouldn't want a bike with the original studs on unless I was getting rid of the bike later on. But for any bike, if you're proud of your bike and you want to keep it, as I do with this one, this is probably my last bike. I've had 37 bikes, I think, and this one I'm going to keep it. It's so nice, I love it so much. I'm going to keep this bike, even if I got another one, a different one, which is not likely. So it's worth doing. Now there's another brake pin at the front. It's the same as the rear. It's just there. Oh, sorry about that, folks. It's just there. If I can get my hand in. Trying to do everything mirror image at the moment. It's there. It's not so visible as the... Oh, that's better. You can see it now, look. Can you see that shiny pin right there? These are stainless, flanged. That's stainless. Now the big nuts here, they have a non-usual thread size. It's often referred to as metric fine. However, what you do is work out, use your thread gauge, find out what the thread size is. You can obviously know how big the diameter of your bolt is. And then those, I ended up buying those from China, and it took about 3 weeks to arrive because nobody in this country had got them. So, you know, order your stuff, don't be in a hurry, is my advice, and just take your time to do it. And the horns there, for example, you know, that nut is stainless. So you don't get rust. These long bolts, which are readily available in this country, go all the way through the engine mounting bolts. Again, I'd put anti-seize on them, because when I took the original ones off, which as I say were about just over a year old, all the galvanising had come off them, where they fitted through the engine body, and there was already that electrochemical bond crud developing between the actual bolt and the engine. You know, it's really weird stuff. It's a horrible white, and eventually it gets, over the years, you know, in 12 months, the galvanising had come off the original bolts. So, well worth doing in my opinion. You end up with a bike that doesn't have rust. On previous bikes I've sprayed them with a hose pipe actually, you know, a fine spray, not jet washing them. And you know, you look, just watch out for what's rusting. So, you know, there you're at the reservoir, that's got one on lock. In there. Here, look for the foot pegs. And then basically I've gone around the whole bike. Now, as an estimate, by buying them on eBay, and there's plenty of people sell them, by shopping around and having a look, Bolt Base is a good one. By doing it as you go along with free postage on the bolts that you buy, the whole project, I think it cost me just under 200 quid actually to replace everything, not including the handlebars, just the bolts. It's 200 quid, which is not, I mean, you know, it's not a small figure, but for me it's worth it on a bike that I'm going to keep. And the handlebars, you know, yes, they're not cheap, but as I say, my original bars had already started to rust. I could see nickel plating underneath the chrome, so it's the same, to be honest, on the pannier brackets. You know, the chrome's not fantastic. And it was the same on the handlebars. I would show you the bars, except they're in the local tip, in the recycling centre. They've been recycled because they're not worth keeping, in my opinion. So, if you want a bike that's not got unnecessary rust on it, then that's the way to go. And I hope, you know, people, it sounds obvious to experienced mechanics, and it would be obvious to, you know, experienced bikers as well, I suppose, that something as simple as a thread gauge and the little caliper there to measure, which is I think about 4 quid on eBay, 5 quid. You know, you're talking under 10 quid worth of tools to accomplish this. And if you just do half a dozen bolts or nuts or whatever at a time and measure them up, you could write it down. I did, but you know, in the end I was just quite happily, say, doing one particular part of the bike and ordered what I needed. You do it, move on to the next bit. I certainly wouldn't recommend buying millions of bolts in one go. But if you work your way around the bike, then you will end up with a bike that's not got rusting fasteners on it. I've even done ones under the seat, under the tank. I'll not bother taking the seat off, but the two bolts under here that hold the tank on are Allen bolts. You can get flanged ones which have the built-in washer, or you can get normal Allen bolts where you can put a washer on, domed ones, hexagonal bolts. The engine ones, as I say, you can get Allen bolts for the engine, but they're difficult to get. I mean, some of those bolts, like the engine mounting bolts, are like £4 or £5 each. But again, you know, if it's a bike you're going to keep and you're proud of and you don't like to look at rust, then that's the way to go. So I hope that helps people. And as I said at the start of this video, you know, I'm not editing them, I don't know how to. I'm not trying to be a personality, and I'm not saying what I've outlined here is even what people want to do. But it's something I've done, and I believe it improves the bike. So I'll put links to everything. I'll put, you know, one link on an eBay to bolts, you'll find it. The bit that you will want a link for is that pin. They're not cheap, but again, in my opinion, it's far nicer to look at that without a rusty, manky pin for the brake pads. So there you have it, just another video, and post any comments if you like it or dislike it, disagree, and I'll be posting more little bits and bobs. I've got a video that I'm planning where I'm going to change the side panel finish, and I'm going to duplicate the tank colour. And I've actually got the paint, decals, and I've bought a couple of new side panels from India, which are cheap enough. So my next big one, I think, will be to change those. I quite fancy having the Interceptor, having the orange crush side panels. So that'll be a video for the future. That's my little summer project, and I'll post on that. So in the meantime, drive safe, be careful, and I'll see you soon. All right, cheers.